Major cyclone threats for Australia and Mauritius, again on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for January 21st. We're code orange for a new tropical storm that's formed in the Coral Sea that hasn't yet been named by the Bureau of Meteorology, so it's got our tag on there, A5, and that looks like even more likely now that it's going to head towards the coast of Queensland and could be a very powerful cyclone. We'll talk about everything that's active in a moment. In the Atlantic though, it's 131 days until hurricane season begins, and there's also a potent extratropical cyclone up there that's been named by the Met Office, Isha. That'll be heading towards the British Isles with 90-mile-per-hour winds tomorrow night. Or tonight actually, Sunday night. 114 days until the Eastern Pacific hurricane season resumes, and it's still fairly quiet here as you would expect. A little front there passing close to the Hawaiian Islands, and precipitation up along the coast of California and Baja California. The Western Pacific also remains relatively quiet, but the deep tropics do have some activity with thunderstorms blowing up in large parts of the ocean, as well as over Borneo and the southern part of the Malay Peninsula. Well, this is where it's all at right now. Cyclone Angreck still going, not moving very much. High-end tropical storm, by the way. Tropical storm A5 and tropical depression A4 still inland over the northern territory of Australia, about to move into the Western Australian region. And of course the storm that's formed in the Coral Sea is something really to watch. Cyclone Belal, its remnants are still swirling around, and now an 80% chance of development near Rodrigues and Mauritius, and this could be another big cyclonic nightmare in the next week or two, and massive uncertainty once again for this region. And look at this, another area of interest we've marked, south of the Austral Islands, way out in the Central Pacific, you could say, in the southern hemisphere. Area of interest 30%. Well, we've just got a title storm there because it hasn't been named. It is 435 kilometers from Willis Island, Australia, 777 from Mackay, 833 from Townsville, 855 from Cairns, and 946 from Gladstone. No watches or warnings are in effect yet, but there are rumblings that the Bureau of Meteorology could start up those warnings later today. And it's blowing up nicely, this storm, and it does look like it's got a good future ahead of it, and it's pretty much starting up right now. Let's take a look at today's satellite imagery. First of all, at Cyclone Angreck, which looks like this right now, not quite as good as its appearance yesterday, and it's still quite a way to the west of the Cocos Keeling Islands, that small mark down the right hand side. It is loaded to the west rather than the east, so the island shouldn't really be feeling very much at all from the storm, and it's not moving very much. Stalling is the name of the game at the moment. Weak steering currents and the uncertainty to its west also causing more uncertainty further down the line. Well, this is Australia, two cyclones either side of the Cape York Peninsula, one of them over the Northern Territory near the border with Western Australia now. Still well inland, but still putting up a good fight. On the right hand side, an enormous blob of convection over this new tropical storm that we've marked. And this is the South Pacific system. So if you are uncertain about what that might become, well, here it is already starting to show signs of maybe becoming something further on down the line next few days. This is Belal, what's left of it, still traceable, but it is just a naked swirl. There really is nothing left of that one. This of course is once again Angreck, a more flat view there rather than the view from the satellite limb, and you can see once again it is a bit of an eye there by the looks of things, but not a good one. Open to the right hand side. I'm not sure if it extends down to the lower levels either. It's mid-level by the looks of things, and so it's going to be struggling. Now this is the new cyclone that we've designated. Whether it actually is or not, we're still not sure, but we made the call in absence of any ASCAT observations. and the Bureau of Meteorology will probably wait a fair bit longer. In fact, I think they only give it a 60% chance of forming today. And look at those cloud tops though on the western side of it. It is being sheared, obviously, because the cloud tops are well displaced to the west, but enormous cloud tops extending close to -100 in some places there. And this is another area of interest over Madagascar right now, causing some excess rainfall. It did have a brief centre of circulation there and decent cloud tops for a while, but could it be a tropical cyclone? I would say probably not. Gradually moved westwards there, moving inland, and looks like that will be on its way out. And this is the rather sprawling mass of this tropical depression over northern Australia, obviously dumping a huge amount of rain, I would imagine, a massive wet air mass, as the west of it still bubbling up decent amounts of convection there in the early hours of this morning, well into the -80s. This is microwave imagery, so it can look a bit janky at times, but you get the general idea of what's going on here. Angrek on the left, the cyclone in the middle, and the new cyclone on the right hand side. We can't name either of them, unfortunately. And this is the radar from Mackay, and you can see some precipitation associated with this cyclone starting to move in. We were looking at this as well yesterday. It's gotten a little bit closer, but not much, and rainfall is still rather limited along the coast. Sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific are warm in that general area south of Mexico, but the rest of the basin is obviously shut for business. In the Atlantic, the Gulf, not the Gulf, but the Caribbean is the only place that could hypothetically see a tropical cyclone really. And the western Pacific, those numbers are still decent in the Philippine Sea, obviously way off their summer highs. Temperatures 28 degrees, pushing close to 29 near some parts of the Philippines. Looking towards the North Indian Ocean, of course the northerly regions are very cool now, but still very warm around the Maldives up through western India, temperatures 30 degrees or more in one or two spots there. Southwest Indian Ocean piping hot off the west coast of Madagascar, but still recovering temperatures near the Mascarene Islands, where they have dipped quite a bit. Mauritius, southern Mauritius, only around 26 to 27, the northern part 28. The Australian region very warm in the Gulf of Carpentaria and in the Coral Sea, but interestingly a very cold anomaly there off the coast of Western Australia, where temperatures are barely good enough there actually. In the South Pacific, north of Fiji, extremely warm temperatures. Where that area of interest is right now, they're around 26, so really on the line, maybe slightly higher than that. It may not even be a fully tropical storm if it does get that far. Looking at the anomalies compared to average, it's way above average in one spot in the South Indian Ocean, but a few spots that are below average now thanks to Belal and Angrek. And off the west coast of Australia, as mentioned, it is quite a bit below average, extending into the Gulf of Carpentaria. Meanwhile, it's the Coral Sea that's the warmer area in the Australian region, and that's where we've got our next storm by the looks of things, which interestingly Jasper just last month, it looks like they've got it in for the Coral Sea this time around. Oceanic heat content is looking very good in those extremely low latitudes and decent in the Coral Sea as well. Anything green or higher is pretty good. The Western Pacific also still got a few slithers of warm or high content there, but certainly nothing compared to what we see in the peak season. So let's check the GFS computer model then for the next 5 days. So first of all, we're looking at Angrek and this potential cyclone that's 80% forming near Rodrigues, and just look how large it gets. All of that energy being funneled from the west there. You can see all of that tropical storm force winds in green there extending like a big long tongue from the northern part of Madagascar feeding into the cyclone, and then it really starts to get going as it moves gradually southwestwards, becomes hurricane force. So does Angrek, by the way, strengthening again, and both of them are prominent there in that imagery. Now the tropical depression over Australia dies off quite quickly, and then we've got the eastern system, of course, that we're watching very closely, and I'm afraid to tell you that it is still looking like a very bad situation for the coast of Queensland in some areas, and actually ensembles yesterday were completely 50-50 split. Now it's about 75-25 in favour of a potential landfall. So the trend is completely switching towards a southwesterly track there, even more so than yesterday. Now this is the South Pacific system. Looks interesting on the GFS model run there, potentially a brief tropical cyclone or maybe even subtropical before moving towards the southeast. Shouldn't affect any land areas. It's south of the Austral Islands, it's around 23 south I believe it is, and temperatures only just warm enough to sustain something like that. It would be an interesting spin up and quite far away from where we would usually see a formation. Comes a potent extratropical storm as well. Well, let's take a look at precipitation over the next 7 days from this potential storm. Now, we did say in previous updates that it may not be as wet as many other cyclones can be, but it has trended up a little bit, and especially for the later part of the track where it swivels back towards the southeast, and this will certainly interest those who are in the very popular locations in the southeastern part of Queensland. First of all, though, let's look at the rest of the state. 12 inches in one area at the top of the Cape York Peninsula, that's 300 millimeters. Near the landfall zone, which could be close to Townsville, we're looking at around 7 to 8 inches, which is 200 millimeters, and inland certain amounts getting up towards 200 millimeters as well. But let's take a look at the greater Brisbane area. Could see high amounts of rainfall here exceeding 200 millimeters and maybe close to 250 millimeters in the Moreton Bay area, and further north still significant values up to Caboolture and beyond of 150 millimeters or higher as you continue northwards there. But certainly this is something to watch out for as we get towards the later part of the week. Longer range then, day 5 to 10. This is what the Western Pacific is showing up. Still a weak signal for a potential tropical cyclone that moves over towards the Philippine Islands, and it looks like it's not going to be very strong at all if it does get there. The models were a little bit stronger on this yesterday, so it's downtrended a little bit, and maybe just a rain threat more than anything else. But it does become, it looks like a brief tropical cyclone there for a very short spell. Pandemonium in the southwest Indian Ocean. Angrick on the right hand side, another storm forms behind it, another storm forms behind that, and another one behind that. Looks like the GFS is having a feedback loop, or it's trying to create the largest tropical cyclone in the world. Nonetheless, that massive cyclone on the left hand side is even worse than that, because it's still a very powerful storm, large as well, and then moves through Mauritius, direct landfall, the complete eyes over the island, and half of La Réunion as well before moving back towards the southeast. Low confidence on that one. Don't get alarmed just yet, but something we need to watch. Australia, this system moving through, it eventually moves out, probably still as a category 1 on the Australian scale north of Brisbane, and then out over the water again, and it looks like it gets much more stretched and dies off quite quickly. So the storm moves out to sea there, not far from Hervey Bay, just south of there by the looks of things, and then holds on as a tropical storm for maybe another day or so. Oh, crazy times in the tropics, it has to be said. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all our products as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request at any time. And I'm still waiting for Hone t-shirts. If you don't get it, then just move on. But we've been waiting for Hone up here in the Northern Hemisphere for years now. In the Scilly range, this is day 10 to 16. That cyclone then pushes back towards the southeast. Once again, extremely large. All the other ones just fall away very quickly. We really have to stress that we're not sure at all what's going to happen with this potential cyclone, but certainly Rodrigues needs to start raising the alert level now, because it is on the horizon and could form within 2 days very close to the island. Whether it goes west towards Mauritius after that is still a big question mark. The model forecast though takes it southwards in the end, and it dies off. And looking at Australia then, so we see the back of this potential storm, but look at this, it gets even worse. 2 more cyclones take its place in the Coral Sea. I don't know how that will work out, if it does at all. Very low confidence everyone, so really don't look too much into this. And the storm could even go, that southern one, the stronger one, category 3 on the Australian scale probably there, could even swipe through the Hervey Bay area and a little bit south of there with more tropical storm force winds. Goodness gracious me, but that is Scilly range. Back on this day, another one to talk about, and it's our resident team member David's favourite storm of all. In his accent, he calls it Cyclone Oswald, but it's actually Cyclone Oswald. Is it? It ended up moving through Australia. I tracked this one as well, actually. It was 11 years ago now on this day, and I didn't think much of it at the time, but on the ground it clearly became an enormous flooding problem for large parts of Queensland, much as what we're potentially seeing from these storms that we're tracking right now. We are code orange for the Coral Sea. The next name, though, in the Atlantic, the start of this current upcoming season, is Alberto. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Aletta, and in the Central Pacific, the next name is Hone. In the Western Pacific, our next name now is Iwinya, and in the North Indian Ocean, it will be Remal. We have counted the Coral Sea storm as the third storm of the year so far now worldwide, so we are starting to get moving. And in the Southern Hemisphere, the next name in the Australian region, of course, is Kirali. Anggrek, of course, was there as well. That was an Indonesian name. The Southwest Indian Ocean's next name is Candace, and in the South Pacific, it's Nat. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.